What is up, boys and girls? It is your buddy Obi, aka 3X, back on the mic and cam once again with another one of my famous channel updates. And this one's kind of a big deal because it concerns some pretty significant news that was shared over the internets. And that is a horn because, again, we're live from New York here and traffic is not going to stop for this video. So you're just going to have to bear with that. But anyway, we're talking about news that dropped over the course of the past 48 hours. That is the official announcement that Yuke, the developer behind the WWE games, spanning all the way back to the SmackDown series of games on PlayStation 2 to our current iteration of games under 2K games, are planning to actually develop their own non-WWE licensed wrestling game. That, my friends, is a big deal. A very big deal. Especially for guys like me who use these WWE games as the basis for the content that they make on their channels. Basically, core shows, leagues, even larger YouTubers out there like, say, Tony Pizza Guy or Pulse, guys who use those WWE games. This is a very viable alternative to that. And I'm actually going to read off the article here for you so that you don't actually have to read it yourself. But in case you do, the original article will be linked down in the description box below. I actually heard of this all over the course of watching a few videos. It was actually an IGN video, of all things, that broke it and made me take a closer look. And with wide-eyed amazement, I might add. So let's go ahead and read this. Veteran WWE 2K developer Yuke has established a new development team tasked with creating a rival wrestling IP. The Japanese studio, which is behind 20 years and 70 million sales of licensed wrestling games, has established the new team in order to create internal competition for its WWE projects and reinvigorating its staff. Senior Vice President and producer Hiromi Furuta told VGC. This is VideoGameChronicles.com, mind you, who actually has the original interview. It's also been featured on What Culture and a couple of other sites, but this is the actual original word-for-word interview. 20 years. It's been about 18 or so years since WWE bought WCW and ended the Monday Night War. And with that pretty much also ended the video game wrestling game war as well, because WWE was the only game in town. I mean, through the course of that, we got the Impact game, which didn't do well. We got that AAA game, which also didn't do well. And we got two different iterations of Fire Pro Wrestling, which was Fire Pro Returns, which was a good game, but, you know, it's a niche. And then there's Fire Pro Returns, which also, great game, much more network savvy as far as sharing content and such, but it's also a niche. It's not something that everybody's going to get into because there's a lot more strategy going on in that game. And then there's the fact that it's 2D. And there are a lot of those graphics whores out there that try to mock the fact that it's 2D. And like, it looks like it's supposed to be on a Nintendo or something like that. They just really don't get it. But getting back to the article here. The studio's latest release, WWE 2K19, was widely considered to be a return to form for the series, but otherwise it has been criticized in recent years for a decline in quality. Furuta confessed Yuke has become frustrated with what it has been able to achieve with recent WWE 2K games, and suggested that its relationship with publisher 2K Sports, American studio Visual Concepts, also contributes to the 2K series, is partially responsible. Now, to get into a little more detail with that, in case you're not aware of the situation, like I said, Yuke has been making WWE's games, as in directly developing them, for years, as long as it is that it said 20 years. And like I said at the start, this also goes back to the 2K, I mean not the 2K, the THQ games from the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 eras. And in those cases, it was still the same thing. Yuke's developed the game. THQ published the game. And they are the ones who had the WWE license. Yuke's doesn't have a license with WWE. They have a contract going with 2K Games. It's kind of like subcontracting, if you're aware of this, if you've worked in any type of a service field, where big company needs a job to be done. So they sign a contract with a contract company to do that work. And then that contractor can sign or create a contract with a subcontractor to provide the labor to do the work that the contractor needs to get done for the contractee. If that makes absolutely no sense, then yeah, capitalism is a really strange thing in the United States. What can I tell you? But there's been a growing strain between Yuke's and 2K as far as the overall development of these WWE games. And it's something that spanned for many, many years. I can recall quite a few years ago when 2K took over in 2012, I believe it was, and their first actual game was WWE 2K13. Then after that came 2K14, and there was like these small little articles that kind of explained how it is that this working relationship went between Yuke's and 2K. And there's a lot of steps that had to go and be taken just to get certain things done. And yeah, that can obviously wear on you after so many years of having to go through that exact same process year after year. I can assure you right now that WWE does not give a damn the content or the quality of the content of their game. They just want a product to sell, which is unfortunately a side effect of just what kind of corporate marketing machine WWE is now. You know, it's not about the quality, it's about how much of it they can sell. And the game has suffered for the past couple of years, save for 2K19, because of that. I call it the Madden syndrome because it's kind of a similar situation what happened with Madden that has happened with the WWE games. That being the elimination of competition, which in Madden's case was, ironically enough, 2K Games, who made the NFL 2K series to be the alternative to the long-standing Madden series. EA went and grabbed NFL's license, so they had exclusive rights to NFL games. And that contract ends, I believe, in 2022. And we're talking about a contract that has existed since the PlayStation 2 and will go all the way into the PlayStation 5 or whatever it is that Sony calls it. It's been that long. And, yeah, since they didn't have to worry about anybody making a game conceivably better than theirs, they also didn't have to worry about making any new innovations that made the game more intriguing and interesting to the players, because that's their only choice. You're going to either buy this and play this, or you're not, and you're going to miss out. And yeah, that's exactly how it's been. And once again, I probably rambled on with a little extra content here, but yeah, that's probably going to happen through a lot of this video because, like I said, I'm into this. I'm definitely paying very, very close attention to what is going on here. So that we will say, we'll go back into the article. Another contributing factor is the lack of competition in the wrestling genre, as it is that I just mentioned. She said, Yuke's historical rival, WWE No Mercy developer Aki Corp, effectively left the genre following the release of 2006's Def Jam Fight for New York, The Takeover. That was their mobile version of Fight for New York. After that, they stopped making combat games altogether and just started doing mobile games. They even changed their name, I believe, to Sinsonia or something like that. They still have that engine, might I add. They still have that exact same No Mercy gaming engine on file, on their codes, in their hard disks. They just don't do anything with it. They don't even license it out to anybody. They've actually gone on record in saying that if somebody had an interest, they would go back to making a wrestling game using that using that engine. So, maybe this would be where we would cue the Cody listening GIF animation here, because at some point AEW is going to need to make a wrestling game, and who better? That would be pretty awesome right there, because who else is going to make a wrestling game? Who even knows how to do something like that? It's a very limited market in terms of wrestling developers out there, companies who have made or could possibly make a wrestling game. So keep that in mind also. Anyway, continuing. I think having no competitor isn't healthy at all, Furuta told VGC. When we had competitors in the wrestling space, we were determined not to lose, and that was a great motivator for creating something great. But now, looking at the market demands, players are expecting something new every time we release a game, and we feel like we haven't achieved what we really wanted to do. For example, in many cases, we're still using old assets and we're not able to do some things the way we want to. Imagine, if you will, a developer who believes that they could be doing a better job developing games. What a concept. I'm pretty sure that there's plenty of game developers out there who feel that same way, but, they're unfortunately at the mercy of their publishers, and there's the whole thing of crunch and not having enough time to get what it is that you want in the game because they want the game to be released at a certain point. In 2K's case, it's always October to November, usually November, that every year you get a new 2K, WWE 2K game in November every year. So they have from that release to the next release, actually roughly, they start the development process at WrestleMania of the next year. So, for example, we got 2K20. The development process for 2K20 began at WrestleMania 34 last year. Is it 34? No, 35. This was WrestleMania 36 that just passed. I lost track when they stopped putting the numbers at the end of these freaking things, which I don't really know why they did that. But anyway, the last WrestleMania that just passed was the start of their development cycle for this game coming up now, 2K20. And they basically have that time frame. Only 1 year to produce a brand new game at a brand new price point with a brand new SKU for consumers. Now think about that. And you could probably imagine why they themselves are frustrated that they can't put anything or do anything new with these games, because they're always crunched to have to release a new title every single year by both 2K Games and WWE. It sucks. What more can I say? Anyway, Furuta, they misspelled her name, Futura. It's Furuta, said the studio may, quote, find a way to do things in the way that we want in terms of our existing relationship with our publisher. However, for the time being, its solution is to create its own rival wrestling IP. We are trying to launch a new wrestling game, she said. Of course, we will retain the WWE team, but we are also aware that our creators are beginning to lose sight of their passion and confidence and becoming focused only on completing assigned tasks. That's not the direction Yuke wants to go in. So in order to compensate, we're going to start a new wrestling project. Furuta said the unnamed project is at a, quote, very early stage, and that Yuke has ideas for new game systems it thinks will result in, quote, an interesting game, unquote. Yuke is still deciding who the target audience for the game will be. Furuta said, so it's possible it could either go in a very realistic direction or introduce fantasy elements. We're not chasing money or trends, she said. We'll go in whatever direction we feel is most interesting, combined with the passion of whoever leads the project. As long as whoever leads the project has enough passion, then I'm sure we will achieve our goals. And there's a picture of the Tokyo office of Yuke's. Pretty snazzy. Anyway, in terms of our new wrestling project, there are many experienced creators here in this field, so I'm confident it's going to be an awesome game, Furuta added. The producer also confirmed Yuke will continue its long-running association with the WWE 2K series. It's a project dear to our hearts and has even become part of some of the veteran creators' lives. She said, we have a huge history making these games and still have a good relationship with 2K. Anyhow, WWE would never allow us to stop making these games. However, the new project we have in mind will be in the internal competition for WWE. Truer words have never been said. Yuke is the only company right now that actually makes an active yearly professional wrestling game release, aside from Spike. And that's not yearly, obviously. Between Fire Pro Returns and Fire Pro World was about, I think, 7-8 years or something like that. It was a long time between those two games. And then, as I said before, you got the AAA game. Has only been one release. You got the TNA game. That was only one release. And even going farther back than that, you had the two ECW games that Acclaim did before they went belly up. And I guess they were trying to make yearly releases too, but they just really weren't that good. So, yeah. It's really only been Yuke's. So, there was that point in time when THQ obviously went bankrupt and started selling off all their IPs, and people were wondering what was going to happen to the WWE games. And for a pretty significant amount of time, WWE had even considering licensing their games to EA. Imagine EA making a WWE game. Like, okay, you could probably give it to I forget the publishers that make the UFC games or the Fight Night games. It's kind of in that same vein. Combat, sports entertainment, whatever it is you want to call it. But oh gosh, that would have been a disaster. The way that EA does things, the way that they conduct business is like they would not have made any significant profit. So, they find themselves, Yuke does, in a very unique situation in that they are the only ones really that are qualified to produce the type of product that WWE wants to have released on a yearly basis. So, they could really actually get away with this and not get any backlash or repercussions from WWE, because then they're like, well, then who's going to make your games? And they can't do a cease and desist on 2K because, like I said before, Yuke is not licensed by Yuke is not licensed by WWE. Yuke's license is with 2K Games to develop these games for WWE. So they're kind of hands off as far as WWE is concerned and could very easily, legally do something like this. despite the fact that they'll be creating direct competition to WWE's product with this game. Back to the freaking article again. Yuke's plans breakthrough AR tech. The studio's new wrestling IP could allow it to utilize its proprietary real-time motion capture technology, Alice Zero, which has so far not been adapted for WWE 2K. Okay, see, I'm about to break off again. I'm doing this entire video because, there's relevant side information to this. Obviously, 2K uses their own motion capture technology for scans, pretty much. Facial and body scans. You've probably seen promotional pictures and videos of these things in action. Like 2K will bring those to certain pay-per-view events and scan the actual individual superstars and their attires and such like that to get the most realistic physical depiction of those characters to be, as up-to-date as possible for the next upcoming WWE game. Again, that's a 2K thing, not a Yuke's thing. Yuke's, in fact, for a lot of moves you can even notice, a lot of them are still the older animations that Yuke's has been using throughout the entire SmackDown/SmackDown versus Raw series of games. It's only been the past couple of years that certain moves have been actually motion captured, and that's all done by 2K for different moves and newer moves and such like that. Those aren't Yuke's mocaps animations. It's all 2K, and Yuke's has to use those assets and make them into the moves that you see in game, and that's probably the reason why some of them don't look as good or as crisp as others. This here would be the means by which they would be able to do all that themselves, 100% in-house, as opposed to using assets being transferred to them by the publisher and their respective development team within, which would of course be Visual Concepts. Anyway, Alice Zero has been created based on the developer's experience making animations for the WWE 2K games, it said. Essentially, the technology uses AR cameras to render motion capture actor performances in real time. So far, Yuke's has used Alice Zero mainly to power a series of AR live performances in Japan, featuring anime characters performing on stage and interacting with a live audience. And they have a video here that kind of shows that off. I'm not going to play it. It's also linked down in the description box below with the article, so you could just pop up the article and see for yourself. It's quite impressive, I might add. However, producer Furuta claimed that if used for its wrestling game production, Alice Zero could also save, quote, tons of money and man months. We've spent years analyzing how the human body moves and how to animate it. So it's no wonder that our research has evolved into the AR space, she said. For game development, we can save tons of money required for renting a motion capture studio, hiring actors, and such. From a production standpoint, this system can certainly save a lot of man months. For WWE, for example, motion capture is created by the wrestlers and or actors, and then that data is cleaned up by a mocap studio before being sent to the artist for further processing and fine-tuning. That's exactly what I said. See? Side info. Gotta be in the know. With Alice Zero, the data can be created on the spot along with the motion capture and submitted immediately, she said. This new system does not require anyone to edit or process the data. It immediately creates data that can be implemented directly into the game. So yes, it can save a lot of man hours and a lot of time overall. We are confident that this is a huge breakthrough. Furuta confirmed that Alice Zero is not actively being used for WWE 2K development, even though the studio would like to use it. Unfortunately, this specific technology hasn't been adapted yet for WWE, she said. Yuke ultimately defers to 2K, as they are the publisher and they have that final call. However, I believe it will drastically change the efficiency of development. We would like to use it. The studio's ambition for Alice Zero is to create something similar to our AR performances in the wrestling world, putting on a real-time esports event where the game characters appear live via AR, Furuta added. Then players could battle against each other live via the AR space with a real audience watching. Think of this competitive element. I think this competitive element, she says, could be done with our technology and know-how. And that is the conclusion of this particular article. So, if we're taking anything from this, it's the fact that Yuke has some very, very sophisticated technology that they've built off of over 2 decades, even more than 2 decades, of game development within the professional wrestling space. Because the SmackDown games were not the first games that they made in terms of professional wrestling. Their original game was something called Tokuon Retsuden, I hope I'm saying that right, which was a PlayStation 1 title, if I'm not mistaken, that used licensed wrestlers from New Japan and a couple of other Japanese wrestling promotions out there. Their first American release was something called Power Moves Pro Wrestling, which also released on the PlayStation 1, or was it the PlayStation 2? I'm not entirely sure. I'll have that actual official information somewhere on this video as I'm saying this right now. And then from there, with that engine, they got notice from THQ, who had gotten the WWE license and needed a new game made for the PlayStation, because obviously the Aki Corp games could not be transferred over to the PlayStation since, you know, the N64 was cartridge based and PlayStation was CD-ROM based. So you're talking about 2 completely different formats. That wasn't going to work. So they incorporated the services of Yuke, who used their engine from their game to make the WWE's game. And the rest, as they say, was history. And from that, all that time, making all those games, they've been able to create their very own motion capture, almost like AI, it would seem, that they still haven't even used for the WWE games, because 2K's methodology of making these games is completely antiquated. It's like they're stuck in this way of, we want these games to be this way, look this way, play this way, and on top of that, you have to make this game every year, a new version of this game, and add on stuff. And then if we want, we can take away stuff, like the stinking payback system, which makes absolutely no sense. You basically eliminated a couple of abilities and turned them into these payback moves that really don't have that much impact on the gameplay, if I'm being completely honest. So yeah, in all intents and purposes, it looks as if Yuke is really, really serious about pushing the market forward in their own way, using their own innovations. And if it succeeds, which I wholeheartedly think it will, it's definitely going to change a couple of things as far as how the WWE franchise itself goes. Now, as far as I'm concerned, like I said, I'm very intently and intimately keeping up with this and seeing how it develops. Because, as it is that I've said in previous videos before, I have no intention on getting another WWE game. Not in this generation, anyway. to which you would think maybe there's probably 2 more games left in this console generation, considering the fact that Sony has actually announced the PlayStation 5, or whatever it is that they're going to call the PlayStation. You would have to imagine that the next 2K game, possibly 2K20 or 2K21, maybe 2K22, would be a launch game for the next generation of consoles. Historically, the first generation, or the first game of a new generation, in terms of wrestling games or WWE games specifically, have sucked. The first wrestling game of the PlayStation 2 era sucked. The first WWE wrestling game of the PlayStation 3 era also sucked. And the first WWE game of this generation, PlayStation 4 and Xbox 360, also kind of sucked. It did not have as much meat on its bones as the previous generation's games did. Almost as if they take the entire code of what it is they already established, instead of just using that with the increase in resources and memory that you get from the new consoles, they just want to reinvent the wheel entirely. And I really don't see any reason for them to do that with these next generations of consoles, but it is, unfortunately, within the realm of possibility. Now, we don't know how far along it is that Yuke is with this new project. Like she said, Furuta did. They're in very early stages of it. But they've pretty much split Yuke into 2 different teams right now. From the looks of it, you have one team that is working with the WWE/2K games specifically, and the rest are working on whatever it is that they do in their own wrestling project. And yeah, I'm really interested to see what that is going to be and what direction it is that it takes. I don't really concern myself with what type of game it's going to be, like whether or not it's going to be more simulation based or whether it's going to be arcade based. If I'm being completely honest, the most important thing to me as far as this game goes is features. And these are features that I've mentioned plenty of times in previous videos that has been missing, gutted from WWE games that desperately need to be returned back into the games. And specifically, we're talking about creation features, such as story designer and other things that give you more flexibility in terms of gameplay. Match types like, intergender matches or mixed matches. Like, if you're not going to have intergender matches, which obviously is against WWE's moral policy, so to speak, but you've had 2 different iterations of a mixed match challenge. Mixed tag team matches should be a thing. You have a team of a guy and a girl. Guys wrestle guys, girls wrestle girls. Maybe a little interference here and there. Some kind of features or something like that to kind of emulate what it is that happens in a mixed match challenge. Because in the mixed match challenge matches, obviously, there were situations where women came in contact with the guys or guys came in contact with the girls. Stuff like that just hasn't been happening with these WWE games. And it's not like they can't do them. It's just that they won't for whatever reason. It could be WWE's decision. It could be 2K's decision. But the bottom line is that with this project, everything that's done with this game is Yuke's decision. And they don't have to worry about whether or not WWE or 2K thinks it's going to be marketable or even appropriate. We could actually get intergender matches in this game where guys wrestle girls. And it's not like that isn't the norm everywhere else in professional wrestling aside from WWE. So they don't have to abide by those sports entertainment rules. But like I said, the features is the real thing that I'm looking forward to finding out what it is that they're going to have. Like, is the creation suite going to be as robust as it was, I should say, in the earlier versions of WWE 2K, where you could actually individually morph, different body parts. Like right now, we got preset physiques, pretty much, and you're just changing the skin textures on them to have abs or no abs, and slightly altering the size of like chest muscles, biceps, triceps, that type of thing. Before then, you could actually, increase or decrease the size of every individual part of the body independently. Things of that nature, And then face morphing, same thing. Obviously, the face morphing has gotten better. That's the one thing that has improved from 2K, I forgot which was, 2K17 into 2K19. Face morphing is pretty good. And I don't know if that's a system that 2K developed or if it's something that Yuke's developed, but yeah, they need to use that. And just beef up that creation suite, and let us be able to do things that we are currently unable to do in terms of the WWE games because of their own preset limitations of, marketability and appropriateness. That doesn't mean necessarily, that we want to make naked women and stuff like that, but that's probably going to end up being a side effect at some point. But if you follow this channel, then you probably follow a couple of other shows. You see the kind of stuff that they do, That type of stuff shouldn't be or shouldn't have to be doctored into the game, so to speak. It should be something that we'd be able to do right off the bat, like texturing actual clothing articles and stuff like that. Things of that nature. They can take this and blow it up into something so big that it will blow a WWE game out of the water. The only thing that a WWE game would have over it is, the actual WWE roster, which I wouldn't necessarily say is blowing it out of the water, because that's not too much of an advantage right now, considering how stale the current WWE roster is, aside from maybe 4 or 5 people. So yeah, this has the potential of being a game changer. And like I said, I'm watching and waiting with bated breath how it all plays out, how it all develops, and when it is that it comes out, I am probably 100% guaranteed to buy it. And depending on what it is that we can do with it, you'll see a full transfer of everything that I do on this channel, XWA related, as in the XWA, View Japan, Purity, anything professional wrestling. I'm getting all excited here right now. Anything pro wrestling related that you see on this channel would be transferred over from WWE games to this game, exclusively and specifically. But we got to see what it is that Yuke does with the game itself, and I'm hoping it's a whole lot. Like, I'm hoping they're putting 100% effort into this. I have no doubt that they are, but it's an interesting time right now. Not just in professional wrestling, but apparently in the realm of professional wrestling games also. And yeah, change is coming. We'll just see how good those changes are. And if they're good enough, then I'll be changing them as well. So, that said, this little commentary read-along, if you will, comes to a close. Probably will do a couple more of these if you guys enjoy them as much as it is that I've enjoyed making it. If you did, then obviously leave a like on this video, comment, let me know what you guys think of this whole situation, how it is it's developing. Are you excited about it? And yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, then subscribe. If you are, leave a notification. Not leave a notification. If you are, then also hit the bell button. That way you get notifications whenever new content is coming. And they will be coming. I'll be doing another update video to give you a little bit more insight on that stuff when the actual original content is going to be coming soon. Because I'm working on simultaneous projects here. And, yeah. Aside from that, thanks for your continued support. And I really appreciate you guys and how it is that you've been enjoying what it is that I've been doing. You know, I've gotten some new eyes over the course of the past couple of weeks and such like that, so that's always much appreciated. Anyway, I think I've probably talked a little too much in this video, so we're going to cut it off right now. Until the next time, this is Obi, aka 3X, signing off. See ya!